at my coffee now, Pete. Rob and Slim Show.
Hello, this is James Dermond calling in.
How you doing, James?
I'm pretty good. How are you?
Good, good. You're an author, and where are you from?
I'm from Denver, Colorado.
Nice,
Cool,
dude.
man.
Nice. How many books do you have?
The Doorways to the Unseen is my first book. It was released right before Halloween last year. And I have the sequel coming out, the second volume of Doorways to the Unseen, Six Tales of Terror and Suspense, being released on September 21st, 2017.
Awesome.
Oh, wow.
And I have a trilogy of 3 novels, full-length novels, coming out this summer. And the audio book for the first volume of Doorways to the Unseen coming out before the second volume is released.
Cool.
On ebook and paperback formats.
How long did it take to write?
Actually, it didn't take that long to write. It was mostly the process of getting it published. One of the stories I wrote in 2 days. I just wrote it. The 5th story, Roadside Diner. I pretty much wrote it straight through on a Saturday and a Sunday with very little editing.
Wow.
And some of the stories took a little longer, but usually it took me less than a week to write each story.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask.
It took about
If any one was more
3 months.
difficult to write.
Yeah, I mean, some of them were more involved. Like the second story, Grandfather's Cane, has a lot of references in it, like occult type references or in Latin language type references. It's kind of a research story.
Wow.
Roadside Diner is a really straight through story told in the first person, so it was easier to write. I didn't have to research it at all.
Cool.
So did you know like a little bit about the occult beforehand, or you just specifically researched the occult for that book?
Well, no. I mean, obviously, I'm a horror author, so I'm interested in that subject matter. But I had to, I wanted to get all the details right. So the story is kind of a mystery story. It's a ghost story as well, and it is about maybe druids or British occultism.
Okay.
Something along those lines, and somehow involves Stonehenge. I'll give that much away.
Nice.
And
That's awesome.
there's like Latin language references in it, and references to things that are involved in like the lunar calendar and things along those lines that I wanted to get right. I wanted to get them in as much detail as possible.
Yeah.
But then other stories, that like the one I'm going to read today. Is The Plague, which is originally The Plague of Badness. That didn't really require any research. That's kind of a straightforward, gory horror story. And then, like Roadside Diner didn't require any research. But other things I wanted to get historically or geographically accurate. Like the last story takes place outside of the country in Latin America. So there's Spanish in that story, and the references to the indigenous religions and like the details of the geography in that area were all researched. I had to make sure I got that right.
What is the most interesting thing that you discovered doing the research?
I mean, I didn't know that much about the lunar calendar. I think when I wrote Grandfather's Cane, I got all I included. The story itself is, about the harvest moon and like the lunar cycle, and I learned a bit about astronomy when I wrote that story.
Cool. What was your favorite of the stories to write?
My favorite is Stella, the last story, which takes place in South America for the most part, but ends in the U.S., which is supposed to be in the U.S. It never actually mentions where it takes place, but it's obvious from reading the story. Like in most of the story takes place in South America, and then the remainder of the story, the ending, takes place in California. Cool. But I never say it's California or Peru or anything like that, but it's fairly obvious.
So did you say it's a series of short stories?
Six, yeah.
Okay,
Six
yeah.
stories.
Are they connected in any way?
The second volume, that's the thing, is that as I write these stories, I'm going to write a prequel to Grandfather's Cane. So you find out more about the main character, which is, I guess, arguably the main character in Grandfather's Cane when she was younger in England.
Okay.
So that was actually the story that got the best response. People thought it was really well written and researched. So I'm going to write a prequel to that. That'll probably show up in the second or third volume of Doorways to the Unseen. Each volume will have 6 stories, and so it'll be part of an ongoing series. I don't know when it'll end. I kind of imagine it as something like Clive Barker's Books of Blood.
Oh yeah,
which I think are at least 5 volumes. And then I'll
Yeah.
collect them into larger volumes periodically. But I'm not sure when it'll end. I might start a new series at some point.
Cool, man.
And stop calling it Doorways to the Unseen. But go ahead.
No, I was just, that's awesome. That's really cool. I think that's great to have that much to go on.
Yeah, I've got the first. I've actually got years of material sketched out, and I've been collecting it for a while.
That's awesome.
I launched my first book at right before Halloween last year in late September, but I've been kind of plotting this out for probably 2 or 3 years, getting everything together. Learning about self-publishing. And building my Twitter following. I have 33,000 followers on Twitter.
I saw that. That was very impressive.
Yeah,
I'm proud of the 8,000 that we have. That's awesome.
But a lot of people just follow me. I worked on creating interesting content, and they got shared, and people would follow me from that.
Cool.
At the beginning, I just kind of shared things that I found, and people thought they were interesting.
That's awesome.
And I'm active on Twitter every day.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have a lot of material outlined. I have trilogies of novels outlined, ideas for short stories. But the second and third volume of Doorways to the Unseen are partially written and outlined at this point.
Yeah, I was going to ask, if that was something you did, if you planned into the future, because I feel like, I don't know, if I was writing something, I don't think I would. I would just write what I had and probably use everything I had.
Yeah, the thing is, I want everything to kind of fit together at some point.
Right.
Yes.
Especially the Doorways to the Unseen series. So there will be references and stories will be interconnected throughout that.
Cool, man.
So they might be prequels or sequel type short stories in the succeeding volumes, and then characters from one story might show up in another at some point.
So you're trying to kind of create a universe in the style of like Stephen King and like H.P. Lovecraft. Clive Barker, I think his role kind of fits
exactly.
the universe.
All those writers are influences on me, of course. Anybody that's interested in the genre is usually interested in those writers, and the things that I'm writing will all somehow be related to each other, and even if it's only very indirectly.
Cool, man.
When you were writing the book, is there any stories like that you scrapped? Like, were you writing one and just said, this one wouldn't work?
No, I took I took the 6 ideas that I wanted to include, because I wanted them to be in a kind of a different subgenre of horror. Like The Plague is a very gory horror story, like a slasher type horror story that appealed to younger readers the most. And then Grandfather's Cane is a mystery, that appealed to older readers the most. Cool. And the first 2 stories, The Drowned Man and Grandfather's Cane, are based on stories that other people told me that they claimed were true, that were ghost stories.
Wow.
that they just, the whole story isn't based on the ghost stories that were related to me, but parts of it are, especially Grandfather's Cane. Just when the ghost part of it is related to what somebody else told me. And then the other 2 stories, Return to Dust and The Plague, were based on dreams that I had, nightmares.
Wow.
And the Return to Dust was, just based on part of the nightmare. It was a really short thing that I dreamt, and I woke up and I thought, wow, that was a strange. I dreamed it in full color, and I wrote a story around it. But The Plague is actually a whole nightmare that I had, and I wrote it down pretty much as I dreamt it. You know, I didn't have to add that much to it.
That's cool.
You know, I filled in gaps and made the story make sense, but it's pretty much how I dreamed it.
Yeah, because dreams will skip
even
around.
The ending is from the dreams.
Wow, that's cool. That's really cool.
So do you keep like a dream journal?
Not really. No, I don't, because most of the dreams I have are pretty mundane. You know, I'm not like a really disturbed horror writer. I'm pretty normal in my personal life. You know, I don't have any. You know, I've never been in therapy or on drugs or anything like that. But you know, I mean, most of my dreams are very mundane, and but occasionally I'll have a really wild dream and I'll write it down.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what the plague was from. It was. You know, but it was obviously a dream. It wasn't so scary that I thought I was there. I was like dreaming it as I was watching it. and then the last two stories are just based on ideas. The Roadside Diner is very much like an Outer Limits Twilight Zone episode, and then Stella is related to my interest in South America. Cool. You know, and indigenous religions.
James,
so, I mean, they weren't inspired by anything other than that.
Yeah. Would you be able to read us an excerpt right now?
Sure.
Awesome.
Okay. So I'll read it from Roadside, or from The Plague, which is actually the most accessible story because you really don't, you know, it's kind of straightforward. It starts, the other stories are pretty subtle. I mean, they start slow and then they build up what is going on, and then, you know, usually there's like a payoff at the end.
Yeah.
But The Plague is extremely violent from the beginning, the very beginning to the very end. It only takes 3 paragraphs to get into, you know, the extreme violence in the story, and then it just keeps escalating.
Cool.
So what happens is the young character Bart, who you suppose is a teenager, you know, who wakes up in his farmhouse, and I picture this kind of like rural Pennsylvania, and his grandmother tries to kill him in his bedroom. He makes it out of the farmhouse. His mother and sister try to kill him. He escapes. He makes it down the road to the town, Cassville, you know, which is the small community out, you know, down the highway from the farmhouse. And Cassville is completely destroyed. You know, but there's nobody there, but everything is burned and you know, blackened, and the cars are destroyed, houses are destroyed. He makes it to the county hospital, and he finds a truck, one of the delivery trucks, in the back of the hospital near the loading area, which is the only part of the hospital that was untouched after all this. So it's night outside, and I'll read the beginning of it, of this, you know, it's like the last few pages of this part of the story.
Awesome.
So it says, there were no lights visible from the truck's cab, with minimal illumination from a clouded moon. Bart could see nothing around him, so he turned on the truck's headlights. The headlights flashed on and lit up the concrete divider between the parking space and the line of trees planted in a row near the hospital's outer lawn. Bart heard a keening sound somewhere off in the distance. The steering wheel was locked, so Bart searched for the keyhole near the wheel and popped the spring with his knife, breaking the lock. The keening sound was growing louder and was originating from the direction behind the truck. Bart put the truck into reverse and immediately slammed into something weighty that was not visible from the rearview mirror. He put the truck into drive and spun it around, now facing the loading area of the hospital from where he had found the parking spaces. There was a crowd of several dozen people running rapidly toward him over the hospital grounds. The keening sound had become saturated and was drowning out the sound of the truck motor as the crowd reached the loading area. As Bart drove forward to reach the roadway in front of the hospital, a figure sprang from the darkness outside the driver's side window and attempted to pull open the door of the moving vehicle. It was a young woman whose long hair was partially ripped from her roots, her face streaming with blood. She was snarling and yanking at the door to Bart's compartment. The girl's teeth had been filed into sharp points with an implement. The girl let out the unnatural ear-splitting keening that Bart had first heard at the farm and ran alongside the truck as Bart made his escape. She hung onto the driver's side door and took out a large knife with her free hand. Bart accelerated and attempted to lose her as he barely missed the throng of enraged townspeople wielding axes and bats. Bart heard bodies hit the back of the truck and the young woman fell off, rolling onto the lawn along the hospital's walkway. The truck was now speeding over the main road through Cassville and then onto the highway leading out of town, its large back compartment shifting and rattling as Bart drove up the exit ramp away from his attackers and into the desolate night. So that's the ending of one of the scenes.
That was awesome. That was very cool.
That is cool.
Okay, thanks.
No problem. Thank you, dude.
I feel like there's like more like I feel like there's like a master like
Plan
in this.
Yeah. That's cool.
Excuse me?
I feel like there's like a master like it's going somewhere, like there's a boss man behind this, like a boss villain or something.
Well, actually, that is a good guess. I won't give away the ending, but yeah, I mean, there is something that's causing everyone to become insane.
Yeah.
And you find out what that is in the end. It's not stated directly. This is what it is, but you can kind of figure out what it is. The story, even though it's a really conventional type horror story and that it's extremely gory and violent, it has a Lovecraftian type undercurrent.
Yeah.
So I got a question. Are you a fan of horror films?
Yes, I am.
What is one of your favorite horror films?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, probably The Exorcist has to be one of the best horror films I've ever seen, but a lot of people will say that. I mean, I've watched probably over 1,000 horror films at this point.
Wow.
So, I mean, but yeah, I'd say that probably The Exorcist is one of my favorites. Rosemary's Baby is another favorite. And maybe some obscure ones, like Let's Scare Jessica to Death.
Never even heard of that one, man. I'll have to check it out.
Okay, that's actually pretty good. It's kind of a low-budget movie, but it's obscure. Actually, another one with Mia Farrow that's pretty obscure is The Haunting of Julia, which also is called Full Circle. And that's actually has one of the most disturbing endings in a horror movie.
Yeah.
The 1970s was a really good period for horror movies.
Yeah, that's what I always say too, man. Some of my favorite horror films are all like 80s, like I think the Wishmaster, the first Wishmaster, that might have been
90s.
like, was that 90s?
That was
early
90s?
90s.
Wow.
I love that one, and like the Nightmare on Elm Street and stuff like that. But yeah, like nowadays, you don't really, I don't know, like they took horror into a different direction, I guess. Like with all the like paranormal activity, Insidious, and it's like, it isn't, I don't know, it's just not the same to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't have the, the kind of, everything is, I mean, I guess that's true of movies in general today, is that everything is done by a formula, that there's really studio movies, like large commercials almost.
Yeah.
Where they like during the 1970s, things had a more innovative quality where, the touch of the director was more apparent.
Yes.
Right.
Or the touch of the writer. But now everything is kind of done on an assembly line almost.
Yes.
Yeah.
They got a real strict, deadline, and everything's just CGI.
Everything's a copy of another movie.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
Well, because movies cost so much now, they don't want to take a financial risk. So they say, well, this worked. Let's make a copy of that.
Yeah.
It turns out everything is a copy almost.
We're like, in the 70s, it was all those original ideas.
There's so many good movies, like what was it? The Texas for like the slasher.
The
thing.
chainsaw, the slasher.
Chainsaw.
Halloween.
Yeah, that's my favorite.
John Carpenter got his start.
Oh, John Carpenter was great.
that
Yeah,
was
the Thing. I don't know. The Thing was horror, right?
The Thing,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
Dude, that movie scares the shit out of me. Because it's like a fungus or it's something fucked up like that, Like
and you have a fungus, right?
You don't know who's infected. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like it mimics you. Like
Very scary concept. Yeah.
Yup.
But I did see a good movie recently. It was the Autopsy of Jane Doe, which I thought was pretty good.
I think my friend Jeremy told me about that. Because he loves horror movies.
I saw Split.
So that was about witches.
Okay.
And my trilogy of novels that's coming out this summer is about the Salem witch trials.
Oh, cool.
Nice.
It's kind of a reimagining of the events behind the Salem witch trials.
Are you gonna do Giles Corey, the guy that got pressed to death in it?
I know. I don't think. I mean, I read about it pretty extensively. I mean, I'm not going to. The story mostly focuses on the young women and the trilogy novels mostly focuses on the young women and the witch trials.
Nice.
Cool.
Sweet.
What have you ever been to Salem?
No, I haven't actually. I've never been to Massachusetts. So I'm from Detroit originally, and I moved out to Colorado years ago. I've been here over 10 years.
Nice.
But I've never actually been out to Massachusetts.
Yeah.
I've heard it's like really cool to go like in Halloween because that's
Yeah.
when you like have it all decked out.
Yeah, I've been there once. There's a pretty cool witch museum. I checked that out.
Yeah.
But Dina last week on our show, she does a show called Twisted Philly, and she said this town you go to now isn't even the real Salem. Like there were other like parts that were just way more into it.
Well, she said like where you go to isn't where they actually hung the witches, right?
Yes.
Well, that's like Leeds Point, where the Jersey Devil
Yeah.
was apparently born. Like the original like shack and like all the structures, they're not there. It's like they built all on top of it.
Yeah. What is your favorite? Like folklore story, James?
Folklore story? I can't point to a specific story, but my mom's family's from Russia originally, and I'm interested in Eastern European mythology and folklore.
Yeah.
So I mean, stories in that vein.
That's cool.
You know that, and that will make it into my writing too.
Nice.
So you'll see things like that. You'll see things like that in future short stories or even novels.
Awesome.
You know, that are based on those.
My
mom would tell me, she would tell me stories, back from my great grandmother who's from Russia.
Wow.
And she would, and she claimed that there was a witch that lived outside their village, and the stories about ghosts that would appear. Stories about the creeping hand, and I can't remember the Russian words for that.
I've heard of the creeping hand.
Yeah. That's cool.
But I grew up with her telling me a lot of those stories.
Nice.
Those kind of scary folklore.
Yeah.
Stories from Eastern Europe.
Hold on 1 sec, James. I think we got a call. Robin Slim Show.
Hey, it's Amanda.
Amanda, could you give us a call in like 8 minutes? We're still on the last on the interview before you. All right, thank you.
Yep, you got it.
All right, James. You there, James?
Yes, I am.
Awesome. Thank you so much for talking to us. Where can everybody find you?
Okay, you can go to jamesdermond.com. It's JamesDermond.com. And my book, Doorways to the Unseen, is available on Amazon, Kobo, Barnes & Noble. One excerpt is on Smashwords. The first story, The Drowned Man, is on Wattpad for free. And I also, the first 3 stories of Doorways to the Unseen were adapted for an audio podcast on the Simply Scary podcast.
I heard that
Halloween episode.
I listened to that. I meant to bring that up. It was very cool. Very cool.
Okay, yeah. So that actually has had 44,000 views since Halloween. So
Nice.
you can listen to the first 3 stories for free, like an audio adaptation of them. But if you want to read the Plague, Roadside Diner, and Stella, you have to buy the book to get the last 3 stories.
Awesome.
So. All right. Well, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thanks for coming on, James. Have a good one.
Okay. You too. Goodbye.
Take
Bye.
care, man.